Deputy Clare Daly has question number 8.
Ceann Comhairle, Minister, this question relates to requests that your department has handled in relation to transiting soldiers and munitions on civilian aircraft through and over Shannon this year, and it follows evidence given in open court during the court case of myself and Deputy Wallace, where evidence was very, very clear from airport workers that the conditions which your department say are in place in terms of where such munitions are held in an inaccessible position are consistently breached. So we're wondering what the numbers were for this year and what checks and balances your department has put in place in that regard.
Thank you, Deputy. The number of US troops that have passed through Shannon Airport to date in 2015 is 39,613. The number of requests my department received up to the end of August 2015 from civilian aircraft to land at Shannon Airport or to pass through Irish airspace while carrying munitions was 566. 188 permits were issued for aircraft to land at Shannon. 5 were for aircraft landing at Dublin, and 345 permits were issued for overflights. 28 requests were refused, all on the advice of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Of the total of 566 requests received in this period, 1 request came from an Irish airline, 6 requests came from a UK airline, 5 from a Turkish airline, and the remainder came from US airlines. And I have the tabular information in relation to all of this, which I will supply to the Deputy in written format, or if you wish, I can supply to you during this session of questions.
Thank you. Deputy Clare Daly.
Yeah, and I think we'll obviously digest that information. It follows on from the multiple pages received by Shannon Watch in terms of permits sought for 2014, and based on the evidence you've given us today, we could say, if anything, those requests are up, that in the main they come from the US. And I'm wondering, in terms of the types of material that was transited last year, whether you have any comments or concerns in that regard. For example, last year, between the USA and Afghanistan, 190 metric tonnes of ammunition and bullets passed over and through Shannon, probably destined for the Afghan army, which we know from Iraq often ends up in the hands of the opponents, in this case the Taliban and ISIS. And I'm wondering, Minister, given that Ireland, based on the information you've given today and in that FOI request, that Ireland is complicit now in activities which is giving rise to the crisis talks in the EU today with the numbers of refugees and so on. You told us previously that the requests must be verified by the Department of Foreign Affairs 48 hours in advance. What I'm asking you now, Minister, is can you tell us, does that happen in all cases? Where is the written report kept for those requests, including where those requests are not granted, which is obviously in a very small number of cases?
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
Deputy, in relation to your point, in relation to the 48-hour time period, I cannot give you an answer to that now, but I will, and I will find that information and I will share that with you. I have done my best to answer all of the different questions you have put to me and given you figures in relation to them. And I also have available the monthly figures for this year in relation to the number of US troops that are transiting Shannon Airport, and I will write to you with that information to answer all the questions that you have put to me. The one point that I would reiterate is that the primary purpose of regulations in this area that my department oversees is in relation to the safety of aircraft, the safety of persons on board, and that any applications for munitions that are categorised as dangerous goods are forwarded to a dangerous goods specialist in the Irish Aviation Authority, and that I am confident that all policy in this area is implemented. And your particular question that you've now put to me in relation to the time in which such applications are evaluated, can't answer that now, but I will write to you with the answer.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Clare Daly.
Yeah, I will accept that information, but if you're not able to tell me that the Department of Foreign Affairs approved all the permits that were granted, then we have a serious problem. I'm wondering, for example, if you like, some of the information that was given, a permit request on the 27th of April last year for a flight carrying 4 MK-44 gun sections. These are vehicle-mounted guns which fire armour-piercing incendiary rounds at a very high rate of fire. There was Javelin anti-aircraft missile parts also transited on that. Some of the information is redacted. Some of the information says that when the question and the form asked, is the packaging in accordance with ICAO technical instructions, the answer is no, and yet a permit was granted. Now, you're talking about aircraft safety and that being your responsibility, so when you're searching that, I'd maybe ask that you would particularly examine the permit granted to Atlas Air in May of 2014, where those packaging requirements were not in place. This is very serious. The evidence from your own department clearly shows that we're complicit in the activity that is going on by US-led wars in the Middle East.
Minister.
Deputy, all of the decisions that my department takes in relation to this area are with the active consultation of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and are consistent with the foreign policy objectives that our country has. And I appeared before the summer in front of the in front of the Petitions Committee of the Oireachtas and answered questions in relation to this matter for most of an afternoon. In relation to the broad question that you put to me in relation to munitions and the kind of material that is given exemptions, the point again I have to emphasise is the role that my department plays in relation to this is in relation to safety of the aircraft and of people on it, any kinds of items that are given exemptions, they always have to be packaged securely and they must be stored in the hold and in such a way that are inaccessible during the flight.
Thank you. Brief question from Deputy Mick Wallace.
Thank you, Minister, you say that everything that is happening is consistent with our foreign policy objectives, and you say that your major concern is the safety of the aircraft and the personnel on them. Well, Minister, I'd ask you, are you comfortable with the fact that if this is consistent with our foreign affairs policy, maybe we need a different one? Because there was a time when we actually used to consider ourselves neutral. But in the last 13 years, it has been established by international bodies that the US military have killed 1.3 million citizens, not military people, citizens in the Middle East region. They have displaced millions more. It's not disconnected with the huge problem in Europe today. If you bomb people's homes and we allow them to use Shannon on the way to bomb their homes, you can expect them to cross borders and to try and find somewhere safer to live.
Thank you.
Are you comfortable, Minister, with what's happening?
Come on, finish to conclude, Minister.
Deputy, I am comfortable and I do support the objectives that we have in our foreign policy. Ireland is a neutral country. The policy that we have reflects that. And as somebody who was a former minister in the Department of Foreign Affairs, I saw the way our neutrality was articulated in different meetings and in different discussions on the matters that you're referring to. I'm answering your questions in relation to the passage and the transit of aircraft through Irish space. And our policy in this matter is clear. I've outlined to you all the figures that Deputy Daly looked for in her question, as she is absolutely entitled to, and further material I have said I will supply, and I will. And then in relation to the use of civilian aircraft and that matter, the relevant legislation or order in that area is the Order of 1973. And that empowers somebody to enter an aircraft and inspect an aircraft if it is suspected that the provisions of carrying munitions of war are being contravened.
Thank you, Minister.
And I'm not aware of such an allegation or offence having been risen in recent years. Have been reported to the Gardaí. And that's my knowledge, and the Gardaí have the ability to carry out such an inspection if these provisions are being infringed.
We'll move on now. Deputy Richard Boyd Barrett.